Our story begins with our protagonist telling the woman to change, saying a tight skirt isn't practical. This makes the girl blush all over, and she asks if she really has to wear those black stockings. Even though she's embarrassed, she admits the new outfit is better for moving around, but it still feels weird. The young man explains that her old clothes weren't good for running and asks if everything is packed up. Just then, Shiato shows him she packed his favorite snacks for their trip. Next, the young woman excitedly shows off her treasure, the wedding dolls he gave her. The protagonist gets a little flustered by the situation and just tells her they should get going. Then, a memory comes to mind of when he encountered a very peculiar sect. There, a woman called out to him, asking if he wanted to join the Heartless sect to cultivate. The swordsman is shocked that a sect that doesn't care about aptitude exists, and decides to join. After joining, he finally understood the meaning of partnered training and harmonious unions. However, the good times didn't last long, and the world of cultivation plunged into chaos. Disciples without powerful backgrounds, like him, were sent to the front lines as expendable fighters. A few months earlier, on a mission, he was injured and saved by a village girl named Xiaotao. From then on, he stayed at her home to recover and never thought about going back to the sect. However, while chopping firewood, he felt an incredibly strong spiritual pressure and was sent flying. In the distance, he saw the avatars of two powerful sects fighting and knew that war was close. In a panic, the young man shouts for his beloved to pack everything, as they had to leave that very night. As they fled through the forest, he says that all he wants now is to take her far away so they can live together. A moment before they left, she noticed he was blushing, but he denied it and rushed them to leave. Our protagonist introduces himself as Yi Zheng, an ordinary disciple of the Heartless sect and also a transmigrator. Unable to activate his system, he had no talent for cultivation and was rejected by one sect. He tried to join several places, but they all turned him down because his aptitude was so poor. The young man then wondered what the point was of coming to a cultivation world, if he couldn't even cultivate. Back in the present, as he was fleeing with Xiaoto, a voice commands them to stop, startling the couple. A woman with white hair appears in the sky. She is Bai Ningbing, the master of the Jade Maiden sect. One of the disciples points to the runaway and asks if they should take care of him right then and there. However, the group's leader tells her followers to wait a moment before taking action. The woman in white quickly rushes toward our hero with impressive speed. With no time to react, the swordsman is struck hard across the face, catching him completely off guard. Then, the powerful cultivator throws him to the ground, pinning him under her foot. The master says she might let the young man go if he tells her about the Heartless sect's upcoming plans. Lying on the ground, the protagonist scoffs, saying that someone at his level would never know the sect's plans. The silver-haired woman is clearly annoyed by the young man's defiant response. Seeing this, one of the disciples offers to deal with the small fry, and the master gives her permission. Xiaotao steps in front of him and pleads with them not to harm her beloved, saying he's a good person. The disciple gives a wicked smile, commenting on the deep affection the two are showing for each other. Without mercy, the blonde girl strikes Xiaoto with her blade, right in front of the protagonist. The cultivator is in shock and starts to cry as he sees his beloved get seriously hurt. He desperately screams Xiaotao's name as she collapses, too weak to get back up. On the ground, the protagonist furiously shouts, asking why they did that to her. Heartbroken, he approaches his beloved's side and asks why they took her from him. The blonde disciple says everyone knows about the Heartless sect's methods and offers him one last chance. With complete disdain, the woman turns her back on him, as the young man glares at her with pure hatred. Filled with rage, he yells that even if he knew anything, he wouldn't tell a person like her. Without hesitation, the woman lunges forward and strikes the cultivator across the face. The disciple viciously attacks him, taking his sight and leaving him crying out in agony on the ground. Lying there and wounded, he curses the women of the righteous faction for their cruel actions. Then the master tells her followers that sometimes, you have to take drastic measures. The disciples respond in unison that they've understood their master's lesson perfectly. Next, the other women descend upon the defenseless young man, calling him worthless. In his final moments, he swears that if he gets another chance, he won't let a single one of them get away. Suddenly, the system detects his intense obsession and begins to activate, trying to save him. But the scene changes completely to the frontline fortress of the Heartless sect. At that moment, the protagonist opens his eyes to find himself upside down in a strange place. Confused, the young man wonders if he hadn't passed on and what this place he woke up in could be. A female voice calls him, "Junior brother," and he's surprised to recognize whose it is. A woman says it's good he woke up just in time to experience her special sect technique. She is Feng Qinjin, and she offers to check for any internal injuries with her hands. He stops her and asks about the war, and the woman replies that it was a huge victory for them. The young woman reveals that Bai Ningbing, the one who attacked them yesterday, has already been defeated by the sect master. She says that the Jade Maiden sect was completely wiped out, and their leader was trapped in a valley. The protagonist wonders why he didn't perish, since his injuries were so severe. With a vengeful smile on his face, he seems to have a plan in mind. Determined, he runs outside, saying he's going to personally deal with the wounded enemy. But suddenly, he's blocked from leaving and finds he can't get out of the room. Feng Qingjin grabs him from behind and says they aren't done discussing her technique. She hugs him tighter and assures him he won't feel any pain. With a sinister smile, the woman says that his final moments will be very enjoyable. The young man realizes that with his current power level, she will easily drain away all his energy. Unexpectedly, a blue screen appears, announcing that the system's repairs are complete. He's shocked to see that as a reward, his realm has advanced to the 5th level of key condensation. The young man wonders what this personality correction system he's awakened could be. The screen explains that it corrects people with ill intentions and gives rewards to the host. Then, the system displays the woman's stats, revealing her attributes and personality. He then grabs her by the chin and asks her why, leaving the girl confused by his sudden change in attitude. The cultivator scolds the system for taking so long and then yells for it to drain her power. Out of nowhere, magical chains appear and bind the woman, who has no idea what's happening. Immediately, a blue energy envelopes her, and she asks what kind of technique this is. The young woman desperately screams for him to stop, but the draining process continues. The young man thinks that if the system had just arrived sooner, maybe Axion could have been saved. At this, the memory of his beloved fills him with rage and an uncontrollable desire for vengeance. Suddenly, he's transported to a strange dimension that seems to be part of the system itself. Looking around, he wonders if this dark place is some sort of prison. He notices the cells are sealed and that certain conditions must be met to use them. Suddenly, the woman who attacked him before appears, now imprisoned, and asks what kind of artifact he used to capture her. The protagonist then asks the system how he can get rewards in this situation. The blue screen explains that he can use any means necessary to reform her personality. With a serious expression, the young man analyzes the information the system just gave him. Another option is to remove her malevolent presence, but the reward would be much smaller. The system then gives him 2 options: reform or direct refinement. Confused, he wonders what rewards he would get for either reforming or refining the prisoner. The young woman pleads with him not to hurt her, but the young man completely ignores her cries. The reward for reforming her is tempting, but he says he doesn't have time to train that woman. Because of this, the cultivator decides to refine her directly to reach the 6th level of body forging. Several golden swords appear and move toward the woman, who screams in desperation. Terrified, she begs her junior brother to let her go, saying she's willing to be his servant. The swords stop right in front of her, and the protagonist seems to have changed his mind at the last second. A voice from outside commands whoever is inside to come out, and the system detects other cultivators nearby. The system then sends his consciousness back to reality, leaving the woman imprisoned. Inside the prison, the woman is relieved to have survived the young man's attack. Just then, the system announces that her reformation progress has reached 50%. Out of nowhere, a guy kicks the door in, yelling that it's too late for cultivating because they need people. The blonde man asks the protagonist why a pretty face like him is in there all alone. With a smirk, the swordsman quickly thinks of a lie to get out of the situation. He then says the young woman seems to have found a place to enter isolated cultivation. The guy grabs him by the arm and says they need numbers, so he's taking him along by force. Our hero gets a little nervous, as he didn't expect to be dragged off like that. While flying, he observes several other sect members moving toward the battlefield. He then asks what the mission is, and his colleague reveals they are going to capture Bai Ningbing. The blonde man explains that the night before, their sect master already eliminated most of the enemies. Now their leader is cornered in a cave, and the young man vows he will get his revenge. They arrive at a large canyon where the other disciples of the sect are already gathered. An older man tells everyone to form a line and wait for the sect master's orders. Seeing this, the cultivator thinks it looks more like a line to get taken out than to fight. Some disciples comment about capturing the enemy, and he calls them a bunch of idiots. At that moment, a blue screen congratulates him for completing half of Feng Qingjin's reformation. As a reward, his realm advances to the 5th level of body forging right then and there. One of his colleagues is impressed by the sudden advancement right before the big battle. However, the protagonist wonders how the reformation progressed since he didn't do anything to her. Suddenly, a voice tells everyone to be silent as a silhouette appears at the entrance. It's the sect leaders, and the other disciples greet them with great respect and a bit of fear. This is Xiao Yasi, the master of the Hewan sect and a golden core realm cultivator. It's the first time our hero has seen him, and he feels the terrifying aura of the old man. With a smile on his face, the master says they can all dispense with the formalities and rise. The disciples thank him, and the leader turns to a subordinate to receive a status report. A woman with fox ears begins to distribute an elixir that she claims increases strength. The protagonist receives the pill but is clearly suspicious of all this generosity. A colleague hurries him along, saying he will be in the vanguard, and the young man is sure there's a problem. He then stares at the sect master in the distance, feeling an immense pressure coming from the powerful leader. Suspicious of all this, the young man decides that for now, he'll just pretend to have taken the pill. The leader points to the cave and warns that the enemy, Bai Ningbing, is inside, seriously wounded. He says that if they all attack together while she's weak, they'll have a chance to win. With that, he orders everyone to advance, and the disciples run excitedly toward the approaching battle. The other members shout that the woman will be theirs and charge forward with their eyes glowing red. Our hero notices that everyone has become very agitated and is certain the pill is the problem. Upon entering, they find the wounded woman, and the others yell to capture her quickly. The master of the Jade Maiden sect is on her knees looking weak, but she still has a defiant look in her eyes. The protagonist charges forward, vowing to imprison her and reform her completely. Even wounded, the woman spits on the ground and calls them sinister villains of the Heartless sect. The woman says with disgust that they dared to use such trash to attack her. Seeing the disciples advance with crazed looks, she prepares to fight. Filled with anger, the master calls them arrogant and unleashes a powerful green energy. With a single, precise strike, she cuts one of the attackers in half without any difficulty. Then, the powerful cultivator dances across the battlefield, defeating several enemies. Hiding behind a rock, the protagonist watches the fight from afar with great caution. He wonders how she could be wounded, because at his current level, it would be crazy to go in there. Suddenly, the bodies of the fallen disciples begin to swell in a very bizarre way. The silver-haired woman is shocked by the scene and doesn't understand what's happening. Unexpectedly, the bodies erupt with tremendous force, catching the woman in the blast. The powerful cultivator is thrown by the force of the explosion and falls to her knees. Badly injured, she questions how her enemies' bodies could have burst like that. Beginning to cough, the woman realizes the mist that has formed around her is not normal. Outside, the sect master comments that the explosion pills have taken effect. With a wicked smile, he reveals that the mist is filled with an aphrodisiac poison. The master begins to blush and feel the effects of the poison acting quickly in her body. She complains that her body is getting hot and loses control of her actions. The young man spits out the pill and understands it not only makes bodies burst but also contains a poison. Seeing the carnage, he concludes that the leaders of the Heartless sect are true beasts. Under the poison's effect, the woman hears a noise and shouts, asking who's there. The woman tells him to come out of hiding and launches an energy attack in his direction. Surprised by the sudden attack, the young man tries to defend himself from the charge as best he can. Then the master grabs him by the neck and asks if he's the little pest from yesterday who didn't get finished. Angrily, he asks the system if he can take someone with such a bad personality. The system reports that her hostility is at 50%, and he decides to increase it. With a taunting smile, he says the great sect master has fallen to a pathetic state. He continues to provoke her, saying she should just give up so she can at least stay alive. Enraged, the cultivator screams for him to shut up and attacks him with green energy. Furious, she says that if it weren't for a traitor, she never would have fallen into this trap. The woman vows to make them all pay and decides to start with him, whom she calls a pest. She attacks him with her sword, and he asks the system if it has solved the problem yet. The blue screen reports that her hostility is at 90%, and he is shocked. The powerful sword strike sends them both flying from the force of the impact. Without wasting time, the woman recovers and prepares another attack with her energy sword. The blade glows with an intense blue light as she moves in to finish the young man off. He thinks that 90% is still not enough as the sword gets closer to his face. At the last second, the blade misses its target and strikes the ground right next to him. The protagonist is completely confused, seeing that she missed such an easy strike. Suddenly, the woman loses her strength and wonders why her body won't obey her. Overcome by the poison, she complains about the heat and says she can't take this feeling anymore. Inside the cave, the sect master can't stand it anymore and cries out in agony from the poison. Outside, the leader of the Heartless sect smiles, saying she can no longer withstand the potion's effects. With a wicked look, the old man says he'll wait a little longer before going to help her personally. Meanwhile, the woman loses her strength and ends up falling into an even deeper hole in the cave. On the ground, the powerful cultivator passes out from exhaustion, unable to move from the pain. Soon after, the protagonist sits behind her, and a red energy begins to emanate from his body. He's shocked because, in just a short time, his cultivation level jumped to the 9th level of Bodhi forging. The woman recovers and understands that her sacred body has many uses, and that's what helped him. An awkward silence then fills the place, and neither of them knows what to do. The master accuses him of forcing himself on her, but he says she was the one who forced him due to the poison. In a flashback, we see the woman, under the poison's effect, grabbing him to relieve herself of the heat. Filled with rage and without saying a word, the cultivator picks up her sword from the ground. She then glares at him with a deathly look, and says she doesn't care about what happened before. She lunges at him to end him, and the system detects 100% malice. The blue screen displays the woman's stats, revealing she is a completely ungrateful person. However, the system warns that it doesn't have enough cells to imprison someone of her level. Desperate, the young man yells at the system to throw out the other prisoner to make room. Just then, Feng Qingjin is ejected and appears in front of the master, who is shocked by her appearance. With no time to understand, magical chains appear from nowhere and bind the powerful cultivator. With a determined look, the protagonist gives the final order for the system to take her away. Surprised, the woman is pulled into the system, not understanding what is happening to her. Next, the protagonist enters the digital dimension and observes everything with an air of superiority. He then cracks a satisfied smirk, pleased to have finally captured his greatest enemy. Around them, various strange instruments hang on the walls of the prison. The master finds herself trapped and panics, realizing she can't use any of her powers. The young man appears and warns her to stop struggling, as her life is now in his hands. Furious, the woman asks who he is and how someone so weak can use such strange methods. Losing his patience, he slaps the prisoner hard across the face to put her in her place. He grabs her by the chin and says that in her current situation, she has no right to ask questions. The young man then asks the system about the reward, and the screen says his realm will be elevated. Seeing the rewards, he comments that reforming someone of her level is well worth it. With that in mind, the cultivator grabs a whip that was hanging nearby to begin. With a dark look, the young man says he'll have to work very hard to train her. The woman is completely terrified and pleads with him not to do this to her. Suddenly, the system warns him that other cultivators are approaching, and he gets very annoyed. Outside, someone uses a powerful technique to break the barrier he created. The blow completely shatters the ice wall that was blocking the cave entrance. Just then, the master of the Hewan sect and his subordinates finally enter the battle site. The old leader arrives with a wicked smile and calls out for Fairy Ningbing in a mocking tone. Seeing the master and the others there, our hero realizes he's cornered with no way out.